We know you love muscle cars, but do you know some of the legendary muscle car drivers that have driven some of your favorite muscle cars? Sit tight as we unravel one of these legends. Carroll Shelby. For younger car lovers, Carroll Shelby may not be as well known as for more seasoned ones, but everybody who watches and enjoys performance cars is familiar with his innovations. In addition to being a master at creating American muscle with superior performance, Mr. Shelby was also a skilled racing driver. Carroll managed to leverage his racing beginnings into a collaboration with Ford that stretched over 50 years. But since Chevrolet was his initial pick for a partner, that collaboration hardly ever materialized. The names Shelby Camaro and Shelby Corvette don't sound quite as fantastic as Shelby Mustang, do they? And this is how the journey of becoming a legendary muscle car driver started. Shelby's buddy Ed Wilkins, who knew that road racing, not oval or drag racing, was his destiny, entered Carroll in an MG race in Wilkins' everyday vehicle, an MGTC. Shelby easily defeated all of the other MGs by taking Wilkins' street-ready daily car. Shelby later defeated a class of Jaguar XK120s that were significantly quicker that same day. The XK120 produced between 160 and 210 horsepower, depending on the engine, whereas the MGTC produced around 54 horsepower at its peak in 1950, for those who do not comprehend the absurdity of that. It's unclear how much horsepower Shelby's MGTC actually has, although the vendor claimed that it had just been tweaked up to 100 horsepower when it came up for sale in 2008. This indicates that even with modifications, its horsepower would have been below 100. However, it was good to win against other MGs, but what truly made Shelby a legend was the triumph against vehicles that more than doubled the factory power of his MGTC. Shelby competed in an SCCA road racing event and finished second in a Cadillac a few months after defeating the Jags. Carroll received his trademark striped coveralls for racing in 1953. He wore his striped coveralls to the track since he was late leaving his farm to attend a race. They became his trademark racing clothes as a result of the enormous attention this brought him. In an effort to get some American media attention, Aston Martin approached Shelby in 1954 and offered to co-drive their DB3 in the race in Sebring, Florida. Naturally, Shelby took on this task, and when he drove the DB3 to a second-place finish at Sebring, he was given the opportunity to co-drive for Aston Martin once more, this time at Le Mans later in the year. Carroll Shelby had to have many surgeries in 1955 to fix his injured arm after a racing accident. Nevertheless, that didn't stop him from racing. He grabbed his hand and taped it to the steering wheel of his Monza Ferrari. He then drove alongside Phil Hill at Sebring, where they initially believed they had won first place. A score error was discovered after considerable discussion, and the squad ended in a respectable second position. With a stock full of Maseratis and Ferraris, Tony Paravano, a construction contractor from Los Angeles, asked Carroll if he would be interested in driving his newest vehicle, a 4.9-liter V12 Ferrari Racing, following a victory at Torrey Pines in 1955. After winning his first race for Paravano, he was flown to Europe to compete on some of the world's most difficult courses against some of the best racers of the time. Shelby's success in Europe was equal to that of the United States. This American driver was so well liked by the Europeans that Porsche asked him to compete in the Tourist Trophy World Championship for their factory squad. With residential buildings on both sides of the track and incredibly tight turns, this was a real road course, spread throughout a small metropolis. Shelby outperformed every Porsche driven by the factory squad as well as every other vehicle in their class by teaming up with fellow American Mastin Gregory. Shelby had great dignity even after winning, declaring it a real success, but he was also very saddened by the fact that 3 drivers had lost their lives in the same race. Shelby later won the only race ever held in Pebble Beach's Del Monte Forest in 1956. Since this race was closed after it was finished because Ernie McAfee hit a tree and died in the process, he became one of just 4 drivers to ever win it. The now famous Laguna Seca Raceway was eventually built as a result of this. Shelby won the title of Driver of the Year from Sports Illustrated in 1956 and 1957. Carroll Shelby Sports Cars, his first bespoke sports car shop, opened its doors in Dallas in 1957. Shelby spent 1958 and 1959 racing in Europe. His greatest triumph was in June 1959, when he and Roy Salvadori drove an Aston Martin DBR1 300 to win in the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Aston Martin won the 1959 Sports Car World Championship as a result of this triumph. The automotive entrepreneur side of Carroll Shelby truly emerged in 1959, 5 years before the AC Cobra slithered its way into our hearts. Shelby teamed up with Gary Laughlin and Jim Hall, proprietors of Corvette dealerships. Shelby's heart, his longtime foe outside of racing, started giving him chest pains in 1960. Later that year, doctors discovered that he had angina pectoris, a condition that deprives coronary arteries of blood, but at first they believed it had nothing to do with his heart. Shelby chose to stay in the United States and continue winning races, so he didn't retire right away. All the while, he even maintained his usual combative Carroll Shelby persona. One such instance was the argument over prize money distribution between Shelby and the owner of the Maserati after Shelby won Riverside. Shelby made the decision to take the automobile and keep it hostage until the owner complied with his demands. Shelby was determined not to let minor chest aches stand in his way since he felt he was so close to capturing the 1960 USAC Driving Championship. Carroll Shelby drove to the Continental Divide in Scarab on June 26, 1960, after putting a couple of nitroglycerin pills under his tongue to assist him get over his chest issues. He not only won, but he also drove in it, earning him the points he needed to finish first on the USAC points board. Shelby made the decision to teach others how to race in 1961, as he was no longer able to race. As a result, Riverside Raceway hosted the Shelby School of High Performance Driving's inaugural event. Shelby contacted his longtime buddy and Aston Martin racing manager regarding the construction of a racing prototype after he had taken some time to calm down. Aston Martin was too busy to accept such a proposal because they were already having trouble producing enough DB4s to fulfill demand. Shelby persisted because he was determined to create a race vehicle that would rule the market for many years. The AC Aces 4-cylinder engine was being phased out by Bristol Aircraft Company later in 1961, and Shelby had a wonderful idea. He reached out to the people at AC and inquired about their interest in incorporating some American V8 power into their race car chassis, which won their class. Shelby merely needed to find an engine since the AC brass thought a V8 was a great idea. Shelby worked strings to obtain a few prototypes of Ford's lightweight V8 engine to experiment with after learning a few days later that the company was working on it. With the help of the 260 cubic inch V8 engine from Ford and the body from AC, this businessman, who was once a racing driver, was able to clinch manufacturing arrangements with both companies. The AC Cobra was born in 1962, when a blank AC Ace body arrived in Los Angeles. Carroll and Mel Chaston immediately set to work installing the engine and shining the aluminum body of the AC. Shelby American formally launched for business in Venice, California, in March 1962. The first Cobra, painted iridescent yellow, made its way to the New York Auto Show in April of the same year. Orders for this new Cobra began to come in almost immediately, and Shelby American agrees to start producing the vehicle. Carroll Shelby had the brilliant idea to promote the car to several publications, but each time he altered the car's body color, so each magazine could have a different looking vehicle on the cover. Shelby accomplished yet another objective in August of that year when the Cobra was accepted into the FIA Manufacturers Championship by the FIA. The Cobra's first race finished with a shattered rear hub and a big huge DNF, so it wasn't a good start. After GM rejected Shelby's plan, the Cobra returned in 1963 to defeat the Corvette and win 1-2 at Riverside. The victory was very gratifying for Shelby. Shelby started working on a new roadster, the Daytona, in 1963 as well. At Le Mans, this new machine's ultimate objective was to get 200 mpg down the Mulsanne Straight. Meanwhile, the Cobra won the 1963 United States road racing title in the SCCA A Production National title. The first Daytona Coupe was completed in February 1964, and a 427-powered Cobra made its debut in the prototype class at Sebring, defeating the Ferrari GTO for the first time. This leads to discussions on producing a large block-powered Cobra between Shelby, Ford, and AC. With all his achievements, unfortunately, Shelby didn't race in NASCAR. Thank you for staying through till the end, and don't forget to subscribe.